Hello everybody, this is Cheri at djsundry.blogspot.com, and today I have a birthday card that I want to share with you. It's going to be a tutorial, and we're going to walk through some of it, but some of it I've already pre-prepped. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that this particular card is for a friend of my husband and mine who is celebrating his 80th birthday later in the month of April. And so I wanted to make something that's kind of elegant and vintagey but not old. So to start with, I chose this gray paper. This is just some paper that I picked up at a local scrapbooking store, and I picked it up just as they were going out of business. So we're going to start with this piece of paper. I've cut it to be a standard A2 size card, so when it's closed it is 5.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches or 4.25 inches tall. Now the next thing that I've done, and I forgot to get out my little powder bag, so I better grab that. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to do something on the inside. As you know, I usually like to finish off the insides of my cards. This time I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I've pulled a stamp set from Tim Holtz. Let me just grab both stamp sets just so I can show you them to start with. This is from Hero Arts, All Occasion Messages. I'm going to be using this one here that says Happy Birthday to a Great Friend. And then from Tim Holtz, I'm going to be using Playful Journey, and I'm using this vintage truck that's on the bottom. So what I decided I was going to do was kind of make a watermark of the truck on the inside of the card. So I'm going to take my Versamark ink. I've already got my stamp over here already, and I'm just going to really mark up my truck. Now I'm using Versamark because I like the watermark tone-on-tone effect that it will leave. It will be very subtle, but I'm going to have to be careful because if you've used Versamark watermark pads before, you know that they kind of take a while to dry. That's why they work so great for embossing. So I want to be really careful that this is dry before I close my card, or it will make a bit of a mess. So there is the first part, and you can't even hardly see that in there. It's just very, very subtle. Now if I wanted to make it pop a little bit, I could add some embossing powder to it, but I'm just going more for this subtle Versamark, or the subtle watermark effect. And like I said, you can't really see it that well. Now, one thing that I've noticed that sometimes I believe on darker paper you can see it a little bit better. But for this, it'll be just fine for what I'm doing here. So I'm going to set that aside. And before I close the card, I'll probably run my heat tool over it just to make sure that it's good and dry before I start playing with the outside of my card. Now the paper that I've chosen for the outside of my card is this La Creme Matte Stack, which is actually a really nice vintage cardstock. It's got some flocked that's very feminine, but it's also got some nice stuff that can be used for masculine cards as well. And so I pulled out some different papers from that. I pulled out this stripe and this kind of a check pattern, and then there's also in here, and I think oh, here we go, this black, but it's almost a linen black. There's no actual fill of texture, but there are marks to make it look like it's texturized. So I've pulled those out, and I'm just going to set those aside. And I wanted to save as much paper as I could. So rather than creating layers upon layers, what I did is I took a piece of white cardstock here, and I cut this to be 4 inches by 5.25 inches, because that's the size of my card. So now I'm going to turn this over, and this is how it looks. So I took just a little bit of a strip, and you can't tell by looking at it, but this black solid strip in the middle actually butts right up next to this piece of paper. So I only use this, I think it's like 1.5 inch piece here, so that I was able to save. Now normally what I would have done is I would have done the whole bottom and then layered on top of that, but by doing it this way I have enough paper to do another card the exact same way. Then of the black, I think I cut about 3/4 inch, and then I did overlap the stripe just a little bit, so it's about a 2-inch square or rectangle, cut 2 inches by 5.25. And so there's a little bit of overlap here. So this is where I'm going to do my front stamping, and this is where this powder I'm going to use my little powder. Now this is an old thing that I've had, but the reason that I'm using it is to help the embossing powder not stick where it should not. So here's my stamp. I have it all inked and or all on the pad. Now one thing that's great about using these clear stamps is you can cut them apart so that you can use messages, and I've actually used this happy birthday many times. The other part I haven't used hardly at all. So it's actually two stamps that I've put together. Though they were original in the same pack, in the same sentiment set, they are no longer together. I just cut them, but then I just fit them right back together. And I'm going to press that down well and pull it up. And so then over here on the side, I have white. Now, I thought about going with gold just because I thought gold would be a little bit more elegant, but I decided no, I really wanted the white feel to it. And so we see here what that feels like. And because I use that powder bag, I don't have a lot of stray embossing powder hanging out there. So that is a great little tool. And I have had that for years and years. I think I bought it in California one time when we were visiting in California. I've had it for probably 15 years. So the next thing that I need to do is I need to heat set my little sentiment. I'm going to test and just make sure there's no stickiness. No, I'm not picking up any stickiness there, so I'm comfortable closing that card. So see how quick and easy that was. So now there's one more thing I want to do before adhering this to the front of my card. And I found this trim, and this was actually a gift from someone in a swap that I had participated in, and they had sent this along, and it matches perfectly. Don't you agree? So what I'm going to do is I am going to use a cheater method. And I learned this from my pink stamper. This is the way she does her ribbon. And since learning it a few years ago, it's how I pretty much do my ribbon too. I take this with a piece of tape. And usually I have tape sitting on my desk and it has disappeared. So I'm just going to use a little bit of washi because no one will ever see the back and it will hold it just fine. And that just keeps it in place while I am getting ready to adhere it down. So I want to be sure that it stays straight on the front, and then I'll put this down here. And then this way I don't have any adhesive on the front of my card. So yes, you could slip something underneath it, but I'm not too worried about this because it's a fairly flat card, so I shouldn't have any problem. Sorry about that, I moved off camera there. So that's how we will do that, and then I will just trim just a little bit off. And I could go with dimensionals, but any kind of a dimensional adhesive. But instead, I'm just going to use my ATG. I'm going to put extra over that area where I've got my tape, or the tape and the ribbon, because I want to be sure that it does not come off. And I am mailing this out of state, so I want to be sure that my recipient gets it. And then I'm just going to center it right down to make sure it's adhered. So there we have a very simple, it says happy birthday to a great friend. Very simple, and you can see that subtle watermarking on the inside. So that is today's card share and tutorial. Thanks so much for stopping by, and remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Have a great day. Bye.